Hey guys, welcome to GGN. This first article I have for you for today, for Thursday, March 20th, 2014, is kind of creepy. Could we condemn criminals to suffer for hundreds of years? Biotechnology could let us extend convicts' lives indefinitely. This is a scenario being explored by researchers at Oxford. They claim life extension technology could mean prisoners serve longer sentences. They also write that the time distortion pill can make people feel like they were in prison longer. So another scenario is the group looked at was uploading mind to a digital realm. So this is all, I saw this on Infowars. I was just going through different websites, and they were talking about transhumanism, and that would make sense that they would sell this as some kind of way to it's either through emergency services of fire, police, military, or experiment on prisoners. It's always something like that, help the disabled and the sick, but really it's about making it better for the elites, and worse for us, less freedom, more enslaved. So this would follow the narrative. This means more enslaved for us, and this would allow them to live longer and upload their minds to a digital realm. This is all stuff that was talked about by the Russian scientist. I think it's 2050 is the plan. Running it 1,000,000 times faster than normal would enable the uploaded criminal to serve a 1,000-year sentence in 8.5 hours. So basically, these drugs will help basically time pass slowly. That's what they say. These researchers were looking at how to keep prisoners in an artificial hell. So maybe that's why they try to make it so bad. And it's really not about rehabilitation. It's about just basically torturing people and corrupting them as far as the justice system goes. And they go through and they give all these justifications for why they would do it. This kid who died in a cold room on a soiled mattress. Good doctor highlights the laughably inadequate sentence of 30 years in prison. So, this would be handed out by the elites themselves. This prison stuff. So, and they just keep going. And of course, they'll throw in Hitler, and say that that they could. This technology we can use on the most serious crimes. So apparently, bankers who fraud people out a lot of money, or fail to, pay their taxes, like Warren Buffett, I guess they could be put into 8 hours of torture in hell. Or police who break guys, high schoolers' arms when breaking up a fight, or throwing an autistic kid into a bunch of garbage bins, tasing old ladies and stuff. I guess they could go through 8 hours of hell. No, they get paid vacation. How to win wars by influencing people's behavior. This has come from the London Guardian, so it's a pure propaganda piece that they're trying to sell to you. Not as if they're asking your opinion or your permission to do something with your money. They're just telling you this is what they're going to do. And at the end of the article, hopefully you'll feel like, well, yeah, why not? That's common sense. When terrorism is staged for YouTube and all sides are media savvy, the military is turning to behavioral sciences for help. I don't know what that means. Terrorism is staged for YouTube. Are they admitting that they stage things like what happened in London and that? So they start with Robert Oppenheimer, who basically helped develop the first atomic bomb. He addressed the American Psychological Association. He warned that both physics and psychology could endanger humanity, but that psychology opens up the most terrifying prospects of controlling what people do and how they think. I like how they say this, though. But as information technology has begun to globalize, in other words, there's global spying going on all around the world, and people paying for that personal information, and behavior modification, they call it behavioral science, has entered the mainstream. There is an increasing move to put psychology at the center of military operations. Oh, big surprise, right? So they say that deception and propaganda have basically been used for warfare for a long time, but there's a growing belief that the modern world has changed so fundamentally that war itself needs to be refigured. Confrontations between standing armies of large nation states are becoming rare, That's because they're just drone bombing people. We covered that recently. With guerrilla or terrorist groups, those are the last holdouts to globalism, barely distinguishable from the local population, are increasingly common. In other words, overwhelming firepower no longer guarantees victory, and it's just bad publicity when you blow up civilians. But hey, I mean, they're talking about Oppenheimer and stuff like that, so I guess they really don't give a crap. They say the military are in part social engineers. Basically, they want to change their opposition, whoever they're trying to dominate, like people in Afghanistan. They said, oh yeah, because you want to bring them democracy. You gotta instead of just bombing them into submission, you gotta try to convince them. And they basically say that it's not so much that they want to change your beliefs or your attitudes. It says it up here. That they want to change your behavior. So it doesn't really matter what you think or what you believe. You're just going to do something differently. It's defined as attempts to influence. So they were to use all kinds of things: cyber warfare, behavioral change programs, hostile computer hacking. But it says here it involves attempts to steer the global news agenda to favor the military's objectives. It says also right here, it could range from providing new organizations with vetted video footage to having a cadre of clandestine internet users who push key talking points in the comment sections of the internet. Talk about a troll. I'll leave this article with this little nugget here. Critics argue that the whole process is anti-democratic, but it could also be argued that it is simply a reflection of how belligerent forces are having to adapt to an age where, for the first time in history, information, their atrocities, are sent across the entire globe in seconds, and public opinion is the final arbitrator of success. So again, it's engineering consent. So the article's there to engineer consent so that they can try to engineer consent even more. Special ops or special forces moves from perpetual war to perpetual engagement after. And something that we've already talked about here at GGN, which is they're basically reducing regular active duty ground troops and they're increasing the number of special forces. Again, because you're talking about dealing with what they call terrorists, and a lot of times they're just holdouts to this. They don't like democracy apparently. So they're going to engage problems before they become too big to fix, and engaging in direct and indirect action to disrupt and destroy our enemies. Sounds a little bit like preemptive attacks or wars. And lastly, again, it has to do with damage control in foreign countries and militaries and have to rebuild it, kind of like Iraq. They said it hinges on the support of friendly partner nations. It's whether or not a nation wants to have special operations footprint in the country. The great thing about them is that they're a small footprint. We're low cost, and they can put them in there, the detachment, like a SEAL platoon, and I think it gives you a great return on investment. Kind of like the last article, public relations campaign. So it's all business, yeah. Price. Then there's headgear for soldiers. It's similar to Google Glass. It says headgear that can measure distances, display 3D building layouts, transmit video from a drone, and more, all on a glass display right in front of their eyes. So this will be used for those, I guess, those special operation forces. But they said here that the guy for BAE, that there's the issue of distraction, whether the data is a distraction from the main task that a person is carrying out. Sexual assaults in the military are at an all-time high, and most of them are male on male. Pretty interesting. They said it's a national disgrace, and a U.S. service member that rapes a woman deserves the death penalty. In his opinion, says it's gotten so bad that female service members serving in Afghanistan are more likely to be raped by a male service member than she is to be killed by the Taliban. Lighter note, it's probably good that they repealed Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy, but apparently these guys don't actually report it. So the U.S. is abandoning democracy, becoming an aristocracy instead. So the only reason I wanted to throw this in there, this is from WashingtonBlog.com, and I just think that's kind of laughable, right? The U.S. is abandoning democracy because we never actually had it to begin with. The Electoral College voting does not necessarily reflect the vote of the American people. A president could be elected for whom the majority of Americans did not vote. In fact, it happened 4 times already. 2000 for George Bush. They said, why would America need an electoral college system that does not, at least some of the time, work the way it was intended? The decision rests solely on the framers of the Constitution. That's right. Those good old forefathers love liberty. Their somewhat surprising distrust of democracy. Instead of allowing for one person, one vote presidential elections as the democratic process would imply, the founders opted to place the responsibility in the hands of a select few who would probably serve their corporate interests, will be most likely to possess the information and discernment requisite to so complicated an investigation, wrote Alexander Hamilton, who came up with the great idea of starting a country where you take on huge amounts of debt, and then you issue currency as notes of debt. A Wyoming welder faces $75,000 a day in EPA fines for building a pond on his property. They had a 8-acre Wyoming farm, spent hours constructing and filling with crystal clear water. It says it was a place where horses could drink and graze, a private playground for his children, but instead of enjoying the fruits of his labor, the Wyoming welder says he was basically hit by the federal government, stuck in what he calls a petty power play between the EPA. He says that they're threatening him with civil and criminal penalties, including the threat of $75,000 a day. Horrible article, story here. Cops ticketing speeding toddler in a toy car. So this is good training for young people. The sad part, though, was that the young driver stopped over and appeared to be cooperative. They even handed her a fake ticket, and she actually said that that she wanted to pay it. So, and the girl's uncle actually said, "I want to say big props to these officers for making a memorable moment for my family." So they were grateful. She keeps telling her mom she wants to pay for it by herself. We do a lot of outreach in the community, outreach into people's pockets. So just to let the future generation of taxpayers know that the revenue collectors aren't all that bad. Police shoot an unarmed man in the stomach. Alabama officer opened fire on a young man, but why? So a young unarmed Air Force airman. He was driving long distance, became too tired to drive, decided to pull over, clipped the semi-truck with his driver's side mirror. He got out, walked towards the truck driver. When he heard someone yell at him from behind, realizing it was the police, he raised his arms and turned around. That's when the basically veteran was shot in the stomach. He then asked the guy that they just shot where the other one was, and they searched his car before he actually received any kind of medical attention. So obviously there was some kind of misunderstanding, but that's part of reaching out to the community. Autistic man hurled into bins and pinned down by police as he put the rubbish out for looking suspicious. I've already seen most of this. This is some of this news. A lot of it's actually a week old, but Homeland Security conducts an unannounced lockdown drill at another high school. They say they were extremely impressed with the school's community's response and the school's close cooperation with the police. I like how they started the article. We knew our children have lockdown drills. You know, we've pretty much, accepted this. It's a sad, unfortunate part of the world we live in. However, Glen Ridge students had a lockdown drill supervised by Homeland Security. Homeland Security's heavily armed East Williamsburg raid terrorized and confused residents. This is, again, an older article. So the NYPD combined with DHS on an early Sunday morning disturbed residents with loud, low-flying helicopters. One resident said that we were utterly confused and frankly terrorized. Literally had a flashlight gun pointed at me from a sniper on top of a black armored truck for the first time I opened out our window to see what was going on. The biggest thing was that he was like, if I was them and I was doing my job, I probably would have pointed at me, their gun. But he said, I wasn't even in the building that they were looking at. He immediately pointed it away, but needless to say, I was terrified because I could have been picked off instantly. Train passengers horror as a high-speed train pulls into French Station with a body of a cyclist crushed onto its front 25 miles after accident took place. But apparently the drivers didn't notice, and he wasn't seen until the end of the line. So it says here it meant that passengers waiting at the next station saw the grisly remains as the train pulled in, with many expressing horror and anguish. It was an upsetting sight. The body was stuck in the front of the train, but out of the vision of those in the driver's cars. So yeah, he was slowing up progress, is what he was doing, slowing up commerce. Should have just got out of the way of the 200-mile-an-hour train. I've seen videos of, it was all just people in Europe helping these old ladies cross the street. It's amazing how many of them they're just standing there and they can't even cross the road. Eventually someone will stop their car in traffic and help the poor people get across. Things just move faster and faster. Thank you.